What if I told you that the richest man who ever lived wasn't rich because he found oil, but because he understood something far more dangerous? That wealth isn't made by owning things, but by controlling the rules of the game itself. And that the same system he built is still running today, with your money, your choices, and your future. John D. Rockefeller didn't just build an empire. He built the blueprint, the architecture of modern control. By 1870, he owned one refinery in Cleveland. By 1880, he owned 90% of America's oil. Not because he drilled more, not because he worked harder, but because he saw what no one else did, that the real power wasn't in the ground. It was in the pipeline, in the railroad, in the refinery, in every single step between the oil, and the people who needed it. He didn't compete. He absorbed. He bought his competitors. He made deals with railroads to ship his oil cheaper and charge his rivals more. He created monopolies disguised as partnerships. He built Standard Oil like a machine. Cold, efficient, invisible. By 1904, he controlled more than 80% of the world's oil supply. He was the system, and the system ... was untouchable. But here's what they don't teach you. Rockefeller wasn't just rich. He was the first man to understand that money isn't the endgame, control is. And control doesn't come from hoarding, it comes from dependency. He made entire cities depend on his oil, made industries depend on his prices, made governments depend on his cooperation. He became too big to stop, too connected to break, too essential to punish, and then he made one mistake. He thought he was invincible. He thought the game would never turn. But in 1911, something happened. The Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly. They ordered it broken into 34 separate companies. The empire ... shattered, or so it seemed. Because here's the twist. When they broke Standard Oil apart, Rockefeller still owned shares in every single piece. And those pieces? They became Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, Amoco, the companies that would dominate the 20th century. The breakup didn't destroy him. It made him richer. It made him invisible. Because now, no one was watching one man anymore. They were watching 34 companies, all separate, all legal, all ... still connected. If this is making you uncomfortable ... good. Because what comes next is worse. If you want to see how deep this goes, hit that subscribe button now. Because the story you think you know ... is only the surface. Rockefeller understood something that most people still don't. That real power doesn't need to be visible. It just needs to be inevitable. He gave away $540 million during his lifetime, built universities, funded hospitals, created foundations, and with every donation ... he shaped the future. Not through force, but through gratitude. Through institutions that carried his name, through ideas that became normal. His foundations funded medical research that patented treatments, funded universities that trained economists who designed modern capitalism, funded think tanks that influenced policy for generations. He didn't control the present. He programmed the future. And when you program the future, you don't need power anymore. The system enforces itself. But here's where it gets darker. Because Rockefeller's model didn't die with him. It evolved. Today we call them billionaires, philanthropists, visionaries. But the playbook? It's the same. Buy the infrastructure. Control the flow. Make yourself essential. Then, donate just enough to look like a hero. But never enough to change the system. Because the system is what keeps you on top. You see it everywhere now. Tech companies that own the platforms we speak on. Banks that are too big to fail. Corporations that write their own regulations. And every time someone tries to break them up ... they come back stronger, more connected, more invisible. Because the lesson Rockefeller taught the world wasn't about oil. It was about architecture, about building systems so complex ... so interwoven ... that no one can see the strings anymore. And here's the question you should be asking yourself right now. If one man could control 90% of the world's energy supply in 1880 ... what percentage do a handful of corporations control today? And if Rockefeller could survive being broken apart, what makes you think the powers that exist now ... can ever be stopped? Because here's the thing. Rockefeller died in 1937, 97 years old, the richest man in modern history. And when he died, his wealth didn't disappear. It transformed into trusts, into foundations, into bloodlines, into institutions. The Rockefeller name still sits on university buildings, hospital wings, research centers. And every time you see that name, you're seeing the architecture. The control that never ended. It just evolved. You want to know what really happened to Rockefeller? Nothing. He won. He built a system that outlasted him, that outlasted empires, that outlasted governments. Because he understood the only rule that matters. That power isn't about being seen. It's about being needed. And the moment you become needed, you become untouchable. But here's the part that should terrify you. That system? It's not just still running, it's accelerating. The consolidation of wealth, the merging of corporations, the revolving door between government and business, the philanthropic industrial complex. It's all there, right in front of you. And every time someone points it out, they're called a conspiracy theorist, a radical, a threat, because the greatest trick the powerful ever pulled wasn't convincing the world they didn't exist. It was convincing the world that this is normal. That billionaires funding elections is democracy. That corporations writing laws is efficiency. That monopolies are just good business. That the gap between those who own the system and those who live in it is just how things work now. So ask yourself this, when you fill your gas tank, who really profits? When you take out a loan, who designed the terms? When you work 60 hours a week and still can't get ahead, who built the ladder you're climbing? And most importantly, who taught you to call this freedom? Rockefeller didn't just buy the oil. He bought the idea that buying the oil was success, that consolidation was progress, that the concentration of power was inevitable. And now 100 years later, we're still living in the world he built, still climbing the ladders he designed, still playing the game he wrote the rules for. And the scariest part? Most people don't even know they're playing. If this opened your eyes, you need to watch what's coming next. Because if you think Rockefeller was the only one who mastered this game, you haven't met the others yet. Subscribe now, because the rabbit hole goes deeper than you think. The man who bought the oil didn't just control the world. He built the world we're still living in. And until you see the architecture, you'll never understand why it's so hard to break free. The empire never fell. It just learned to hide in plain sight.